which primary and support weapon combos are most effective in super helldive difficulty, which have become even more viable since the recent nerfs and difficulty increase. How good is the Cookout and the Autocannon combo? Seriously. I set out to explore these questions, and following on from the recent Escalation of Freedom update and the new warbond, I've been so surprised at just how much the game has shifted in terms of what works most effectively against both bugs and bots. With that in mind, I've been experimenting with different weapon combos on stream and was inspired to create this video. So here are 7 more primary and support weapon combos which I've been enjoying recently, with the added emphasis on being that this is for super helldive difficulty. As always, please do sound off in the comments below with your favourite synergistic combos. Now, with that being said, let's get into it. First up, let's take a look at the bugs and start off with what is possibly now my new favourite combination against terminids, the Cookout and the Autocannon. And believe me folks, this is a bold statement from me because, as you all know, I am a huge Blitzer fan. For me, nothing has ever come close, and I will be sharing with you an absolutely S-tier Blitzer combo. More on that later. Having used this weapon for 2 days now, I am confident to say that pairing this with the Autocannon is a supreme choice. It is your light horde clear choice and is designed to deal with chaff, not heavy targets. It can one-tap hunters and warriors, especially if you get all the pellets to land, and this will either kill them outright or let the fire damage drain the rest of their HP away, which is especially true of warriors. Its ability to stagger and crowd control is absolutely insane, and this is where I think a lot of its prowess actually comes from, not to mention that it just feels really fun and effective to play. If you're a Blitzer fan, you will quickly find yourself at home and getting into a rhythm with this weapon. It can bully any chaff enemy and even pushes stalkers around the map, which is another huge win in my opinion. You can also reload 1 ammo after every shot if you work this in rhythmically. Check out this clip here from Thick Fillet demonstrating this beautifully. This weapon also does really well at dealing with shriekers, which we affectionately refer to on stream as flappies. Tap them with 1 shot and set them on fire, and this is always enough to bring them crashing to the ground. Once you get used to the projectile travel time and the speed, you can actually start sniping these annoying suckers from quite far away. However, where the Cookout does start to fail us is trying to deal with the new tanky alpha commanders and spear enemies. Fortunately, this is where the Autocannon steps up. It one-taps alpha commanders with ease if you land a headshot. One-taps them, folks. You can literally be spamming down a wave of enemies and quickly switch to the Autocannon and deliver a well-placed tap to the head, completely eliminating them from the mix. With that in mind, make sure you are rocking a piece of peak physique armor for that tasty increase to stability, making this and dealing with chargers and other heavy targets much easier in terms of aligning your shots. More on that later. The AC can also deal with bile spewers and nursery spewers in 2 shots, and this is an enemy that the Cookout is absolutely useless against, and they appear in abundance in higher difficulties, so it is really important, particularly T10, that you are equipped to deal with these if they are on the map, because they can be such a pain. Just make sure when you're using the Autocannon that you take advantage of reloading at above half capacity, so your reloads are faster when possible. In addition to this, it can also take out chargers if you mag dump into their rear durable spots. I believe it's 3 to 4 shots. Someone might correct me on that. No, he's not dead. And if you're lucky enough to get a line of sight on the Impaler's soft gooey mouth where its tentacles come from, you can do the same thing here. And I've also noticed that with peak physique, you can actually get some cheeky snipe shots in on those fleshy weaker parts on the Impaler if you get your angles right, so just be sure to look out for them. This combination will have you equipped to deal with any bug composition that can be thrown at you, and it's a great place to be in, folks. We do a lot of loadout and weapon testing live on stream, and a lot of the footage you're seeing here is captured there. With that in mind, if you could take a moment to like the video and drop the channel a subscribe, it will make sure that you're notified when I go live, and it also feeds the algorithm and really helps me out. Thank you. Now, these next 2 really surprised me, not only in terms of their overall effectiveness, but also in terms of the role they play and just outright fun factor. This first choice does have a small decision to make, taking the Blitzer and the Autocannon, or, and here's the choice, the Commando launcher. This totally depends on your own preferences. If you're a backpack enjoyer, then going for the Commando with its guided rocket capabilities is a great way to go, as it will allow you to contribute to killing Bile Titans and other heavy targets effectively. It also, of course, allows you to use things like the Laser Dog or the Jetpack. However, with that being said, I am once again leaning towards the Autocannon here for the reasons stated previously when we discussed the Cookout. And this, folks, is crazy to me because I have always valued a backpack stratagem over using a support weapon with a backpack slot. It kind of feels like Arrowhead have accidentally pushed us into a very different play style and meta against bugs now, which actually feels a lot like the automatons meta of the previous patch before Escalation of Freedom landed, and this is pretty wild, to be honest. In terms of the Blitzer, this thing needs no introduction, and along with the fact you can now just hold your finger down on the trigger to shoot it, it's insanely formidable against all small targets. The other surprise that I've been having a great deal of fun with is the Pummeler SMG and the MG264, a very strange pairing. Whilst the Pummeler is not always perhaps the best candidate when comparing it to things like the Cookout or the Blitzer, for example, it does still feel incredibly punchy when using it on T10 missions, and as long as you focus on the correct targets with it, and that is all light, small, chaff enemies, forget it if you're trying to deal with alpha commanders and any spewer type folks. This thing really does work, and you can use it with one hand and shoot backwards whilst you're running with it, which is great because you do a lot of that in T10. However, back to the alpha commanders and the spewer types, this is where the MG264 comes into play. With peak physique, this thing absolutely shreds spewers. It actually turns them into a bit of a joke, to be honest. So rather than letting rip with the MG, try to be selective when you switch to it and really make those shots count. You'll need to bring correct stratagem combos. I recommend the airstrike, Gatling barrage, and orbital precision for most of these setups to deal with heavy targets, but this combo is really just there to make sure terminid chaff capabilities are neutralized. It does, of course, really benefit from having a supply pack involved to continue to funnel ammo into the hungry beast that is the MG264, but this is beneficial for your Pummeler SMG anyway. Speaking of supply packs, this one is a bit of an honorable mention, and actually one that I've mentioned in a previous video, and it's really now the only way we can play our beloved Breaker Incendiary shotgun that has now been nerfed. Combining this with the grenade launcher and the supply pack negates the horrible 2-mag removal we are now contending with after the recent nerfs Arrowhead have implemented. Unfortunately, taking a grenade launcher to a bug mission is always, and has always been, an absolute pleasure. The Breaker rips through all bug chaff with ease and has the added bonus of melting shriekers out of the sky, but you can use the grenade launcher to deal with bile spewers effectively with 3 shots that can AoE down groups of them. Chargers could also be taken down, but I would recommend ensuring teammates are equipped to help out here, along with some anti-heavy stratagems to support here. Moving on to the automatons, which is now even more utterly insane than they were previously, with the changes that have come in the form of adding Striders that essentially have Devastator rockets and stupidly tough armor chassis, and just the sheer volume of Devastators. With that in mind, our old friend the Railgun supply pack combo has come back to the forefront of our choices. Combining the Plasma Punisher and the Railgun with a supply pack is a surefire way to get you serious credit from all your teammates. The Railgun can now one-shot the armored Striders with very little consideration for where to shoot on its main bulk, and really importantly, now that gunships have had their thrusters nerfed, we can bring these down with the Railgun with much more ease. We can also dispose of hulks with some well-placed shots to the eye, and using this weapon against bots really does reward a gunslinger style of play. It's seriously enjoyable, folks, if you like to do that. The Plasma Shotgun, as always, is a superb pairing with this weapon because it effectively just bullies everything around the battlefield, and when you're dealing with those scary masses of Devastators that are pointing their beady red, oil-swilling eyes and rockets at you, you can rest assured that if you start landing your shots with this weapon, they will be falling around the place like they've just downed 10 pints, and it effectively neutralizes them and stops them in their tracks. In fact, The more I think about it, Escalation of Freedom is essentially the escalation of crowd control patch. We seem to be being pushed towards the idea of dealing with chaff in abundance via this method. This is also the case for the new Striders as well, which makes them much less scary. Next up, and this works even more effectively now that gunships have been nerfed, the Plasma Punisher and HMG 206. Now that I've had the time to explore a wider range of combinations, along with taking some inspiration from the comment section on the previous video, I am confident in saying that pairing these two weapons together is a supreme choice. Shooting gunships out of the sky is incredibly satisfying, and my advice here would be look beyond the center of the screen, if that makes sense, and watch the movements of the red dot sight as you spray this weapon, and you will very quickly find a rhythm. Once you get used to this weapon does go to the next level. It can handle any situation with ease and make short work of large packs of enemies, and once you get comfortable with them, you will be surprised at just how effective you are when you rapid fire this thing. With that being said, the addition of the third-person reticle also makes this weapon an absolute joy to use. Again, look beyond the center of the screen and keep your eye on the circle and get to grips with the recoil pattern and watch the way it moves as you shoot. And learning this is probably best done by dropping the RPM down to 450, but I would say once you've got the hang of it, keep it in the middle of the road and you can still control this really effectively, and you can actually move around freely when you do this and it still lands shots pretty effectively. I still recommend lying down if you want to take things slowly, but I have found there's certainly different levels of nuance to this weapon if you want to push its overall output. The only enemy I would say you'll have issues with is the shielded Devastators. This requires a little more precision with your aim, otherwise they just end up tanking lots of shots and it can actually be a bit of a pain, especially when they're at range and you're spraying into a group. You need to keep an eye out for that symbol that shows you that you're hitting armored areas to make sure you're not wasting your shots. But this is where our new favorite partner for the HMG comes into play, the Plasma Punisher. When you get used to the lobbing / arcing nature of the projectiles, it cannot be understated just how effective this is to totally stun lock large groups of Devastators and Striders. It takes around 4 to 5 shots to kill a Devastator and around 1 or 2 to kill a Strider depending on where you hit them, and Berserkers go down in about 3 to 4 and a bot of course goes down in 1. This is with the caveat, or rather a positive I guess, that it staggers everything. Striders wobble around, Devastators stagger around, Berserkers do the same. You can lock down a big group and leave that open for your mates to go and kill them, or for you to get a stratagem in or whatever. It's absolutely amazing. This complements the HMG brilliantly because you can handle any enemy type at long range and make a choice between absolutely destroying them or stun locking them and slowly chipping away at them. Along with the HMG4 tapping Hulks in the eye, the Plasma does work at Hulk vents, making it a viable choice here. The Tenderizer, combined with the Autocannon, is another superb combination when considering the recent buffs to the Tenderizer, which now does a whopping 95 damage per hit with increased stagger strength, and despite its light armor penetration, the fire rate and immaculate handling more than makes up for the lack of penetration there. It makes incredibly short work of most automaton infantry with ease, and if you're accurate with your headshots, you can beam down Devastators fairly quickly. Scrapping that, you can go for leg shots for a more aim-friendly approach if you're looking to take these down with a Tenderizer. And with that being said, accompanying this with the Autocannon really means that we should probably really be focusing the AC to deal with Devastator packs. It can rip through Devastators, especially if you just spam into groups and ensure your hits land. It makes short work of gunships if you hit the engine, and the same can be said if you're hitting the right spots on Hulks, tanks, fabs, mortars and such like. Pairing this setup with another autocannon turret and or a rocket sentry allows you to literally delete any scary automaton column, provided you've positioned everything in a way that lets you get your shots off first. You can switch to the Scorcher instead of the Tenderizer in this loadout as well if you want to make it a more desirable setup for yourself, the reasons outlined previously. But I will say, folks, the star of the show here really is the Tenderizer. I'm just so happy we can use weapons like the Tenderizer now in a bot loadout, because for a while it's not been that way. Try the Tenderizer on bots if you haven't already, folks. Absolute weapon of destruction. What primary and support weapon combinations do you like to run with in Escalation of Freedom, and why? Sound off in the comments below. Take care of yourselves, keep having fun, and I'll see you in the next one.